In 2020, a South Korean film became the first non-English language movie to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. That film was Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho. It cost roughly $11 million to make. It earned over $260 million at the global box office. The question that statistic raises is not simply how one film succeeded. The question is why an entire national cinema, a relatively small one, from a country of 51 million people, had spent 2 decades building the credibility that made that moment possible. And more importantly, why it did so entirely on its own terms. Consider the scale of what Korean cinema achieved in a compressed time frame. In 2019, South Korea ranked 4th globally in the number of films produced, according to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. Domestic films consistently captured over 50% of South Korea's own box office, a figure most countries, including France and the United Kingdom, struggle to reach. The Korean Film Council, known as KOFIC, reported that by 2023, Korean content on Netflix alone had been viewed in over 90 countries. A single series, Squid Game, became Netflix's most-watched show in history at the time of its release, accumulating 1.65 billion viewing hours in its first 28 days. And the combined export value of Korean film and television content crossed $1 billion annually by the early 2020s, according to the Korea Creative Content Agency. These are not the numbers of a niche art cinema. They are the numbers of a genuine industrial power. The roots of this success trace back to a moment of national crisis. After the 1997 Asian financial crisis devastated South Korea's economy, the government recognized that cultural exports could be a new engine of growth. Investment in film infrastructure accelerated. Crucially, South Korea implemented a screen quota system, requiring domestic cinemas to show Korean films for a minimum number of days per year, eventually set at 146 days, though later reduced to 73 under U.S. trade pressure. This protected domestic storytellers long enough for a generation of filmmakers to mature. Directors like Park Chan-wook, Bong Joon-ho, and Lee Chang-dong were given space to develop highly distinctive voices. Korean studios also made an unusual structural choice. They kept creative control largely in the hands of directors rather than studios, unlike the Hollywood model. The result was a cinema that was commercially ambitious but aesthetically uncompromising, blending genre mechanics with social critique in ways global audiences found genuinely surprising. Success at this scale carries its own tensions. As Korean content became valuable to global platforms, creative pressure mounted to produce for international tastes rather than domestic ones. Netflix's investment in Korean originals surged past $2.5 billion between 2021 and 2025, according to Netflix's own public statements, a figure that brought money but also editorial influence. Some Korean critics and filmmakers have raised concerns that streaming economics incentivize safe, high-concept formats over the quieter, more ambiguous films that built the industry's reputation. There is also the question of labor. Korean film production has long relied on informal and intensive working conditions, and a system not always recognized for sustainable employment. The very efficiency that made Korean cinema competitive now faces scrutiny as the industry scales. Soft power and industrial success are rarely cost-free. The Korean cinema story is not ultimately about one film or one award. It is about what happens when a country protects cultural space long enough for genuine voices to develop, then connects those voices to global infrastructure at the right moment. The universal pattern here is identifiable. Cultural industries that try to replicate dominant markets tend to produce imitations. Those that insist on their own grammar, their own class tensions, their own family structures, their own moral ambiguities, occasionally produce something the dominant market has no answer for. South Korea did not conquer Hollywood by becoming Hollywood. It succeeded by refusing to. That refusal, sustained across 2 decades of deliberate policy and creative stubbornness, is the lesson other countries are now studying very carefully.